been 3 murders on Long Harvest Lane, decades apart. The bodies are all identical.
You've fallen down a rabbit hole. I can't follow you.
Tell me what's going on.
The body is from the past, present, and future.
This must be based on a true story.
Welcome to Cordkillers Reckoning. The world of entertainment has turned upside down, my friends, and we are out here on our own just trying to find out how to watch what we want, when we want, where we want. I'm Tom Merritt. Where's the good stuff, Brian?
Hey, man, I assume it must have been ripped from the headlines of the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, because this looks like a documentary. Am I right, Bryce?
Well, so that
True
was
crime, at least, right?
crime. So that was a trailer for Netflix's upcoming Bodies. It is based on a graphic novel, and it's about a series of identical murders that take place in 4 different time periods, and 4 different crews are trying to figure it out. That's on October 19th.
Oh, that's interesting, because maybe we just got a spoiler in that preview, because it seemed to imply that somebody had put together what sound like 4 different timelines in one sentence.
No, it's different time periods, different decades.
Right. Okay, but one timeline.
We'll have to find out October 19th on
Or
Netflix.
is it?
It's clones.
I guess you could read the book.
You ruined it, Brian. Probably clones. Meanwhile, we are out here looking for stuff. So let's go on a supply run.
Supply run, supply run, supply run.
Loki's season 2 debut reached 10.9 million global views in its first 3 days. So a lot of folks on their supply run found it. That's the second most watched premiere of the year for Disney Plus, behind The Mandalorian, which debuted back in March. Just that was in March? Seems so much longer ago. Disney defines a view as the total number of minutes streamed by all viewers divided by the total runtime of the episode. Interesting way to do it. Disney last released viewership data for Ahsoka, but used a 5-day window for that. They only had to use a 3-day window for Loki. So a few points worth noting. People seem to want Loki more than they want many other Disney Plus originals these days. Numbers are all over the place, different ways of calculating them. And a view in the eye of the streaming services executives is different than a view in our way of looking at it. Brian, which of these points should we focus on?
Let's talk about what constitutes a view, because there have been times that people have said, if you make it 30% of the way in, you pretty much viewed it. And I believe at various points, Netflix has embraced that model. To be honest, I think that this is a very bold, conservative way to do it. It's like,
it is.
Tally up the viewer minutes, divide by the length of the show. That's how many people watch the show. That's something that YouTube does not do. That is something that Netflix has not done. I actually think that in terms of honesty, directness, and transparency, that's a bold take, and the kind of take that you can make when you're Disney and you're not as reliant on ad revenues.
I will say Netflix in their top 10 stuff does list both views and hours viewed. Alongside the runtime for their shows and series. So
you could do the math yourself, I guess.
But this is Netflix having a whole dedicated website that none of the other streamers have a top 10 website that gives all of this stats out. So.
And it is worth noting, correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, but this is one of the sticking points during the writer strike and the ongoing SAG strike is that the people who are producing the things want to know how many people, like, they need a proxy of value of what they're providing so that they can negotiate properly.
And I think at least one of
that's different than what we're talking about here. I would point that out, is what you put in the public, what you release to Variety or Deadline isn't what the writers want. What the writers want are actionable numbers on which they can base a royalty. And I don't think the writers care if Netflix makes that public or not. And Netflix isn't making that public. But what the writers want is you need to report it to us. If we worked on that show, we want the real numbers.
That's interesting, because now it makes me want to dive into the weeds, because what if this is not a generously conservative number, but what if this is a way to reduce the overall numbers so they have to pay fewer royalties by
The royalty is going to be governed by the contract, which is going to very clearly say, based on this mathematical formula,
right,
you pay us this much. This is all for public consumption. But in the media, in the press, in the mind's eye, we want the number to sound like this.
Okay. All right. Well, then I go back to that is a very conservative way to estimate.
It is. Yeah. It's an unusually conservative way to do it. But then they just tweak the 3 and 5 day window reporting to make the number sound bigger or smaller. I mean, the other thing here though, is that, Loki did really well. Loki did better than Ahsoka. Not as good as Mandalorian. But also there's been fewer Star Wars shows out there. There's been a lot of Marvel shows and there's a little Marvel fatigue now. So,
the immediate temptation is to use the viewership as a proxy for the quality of the thing. However, Andor did not do very well. And in my opinion, it's the highest quality Star Wars thing we've had since Star Wars. What we could definitely agree on, I assume, is that it is a proxy for people getting, for people being satisfied for what they expected to get. And in the case of Loki season 1, probably looks almost identical to Loki season 2. Whereas Ahsoka, you're relying on a live adaptation of the story of CGI, forgive me, Tom, a children's show, which maybe would reduce those numbers and make them less popular.
Why do I need to forgive you for calling a 7+ rated show a children's show?
Well, I just know you like it very much, and I don't want to be diminishing about it.
You wanted me to forgive you for saying it was CGI because it was actually just animated. But
no, what I wanted to do is not try to diminish your enthusiasm for it in any way.
Sure, no, and it wouldn't be like it doesn't matter whether it's 7+ if it's good, right? And your point really is there were fewer people excited for Ahsoka than were excited for Loki, because it didn't get all those streams because episode was so good and everybody told each other how good it was. They got all those numbers because people were excited based on season 1 to see what season 2 was going to look like.
Right. And season 2, structurally, I assume, I haven't seen it yet, but I assume it looks an awful lot like I often think about the style of shows as like walking up to a Coke machine and you press the Coke button. You'd be very disappointed if an RC Cola came out. You'd be slightly less disappointed if it was a Coke Zero or something like that. Like you want things, consumers go to a thing expecting a thing and they like it when the thing is the thing, basically.
Yeah, this is not what I ordered. You're going to send it back, right? So Loki is continuing the story from the end of season 1. So yes, you are very much getting the same thing. Whereas, to your example with Ahsoka, it was picking up 30 years later from Star Wars Rebels, and its only other connection was to Clone Wars, which happened even farther in the timeline of the story before and in farther back in reality, plus some appearances by Ahsoka in The Mandalorian.
Right. So, having said that, have either of you guys seen? I know you've watched all of Ahsoka, Tom. But what about Loki? Is it good? Should I watch?
It's great. No, I mentioned this last week. It got off to a rip-roaring start, and I watched the episode 2 this week. In fact, we wanted to watch it. It wasn't we need to get around to watching that. It was like, oh, is it out yet? Let's watch it. It slowed down a little bit from that pace of the first episode, but kept going, and I am hopeful that it's going to keep going at the quality level, especially because it's only 6 episodes.
Yeah, it felt those 2 episodes felt very meaty, about equally meaty to the half of a season of Our Flag Means Death that is out now. I thought that they were kind of similar in terms of that how much density was being squished into that amount of time. Very good season. You should catch it.
Now, possibly related to this conversation, let's see. It is about one of Disney Plus's Marvel TV shows, Daredevil Born Again, which is the series with Charlie Cox reprising the Daredevil role that he played on the Netflix series, is changing out its writers and directors. Head writers Chris Old and Matt Corman will keep their executive producer credit because they did work on the show, but they will not be writing the show. Fewer than half of the 18 episodes were shot. Deadline says the show will keep some of that, but it's going to shift from being a procedural to a serialized show. The word on the street was that they were doing 3-episode arcs, similar to Andor, And now they're just going to go into a full serialized storyline. Also, Deadline notes that other Marvel series are shifting their premiere dates. Hawkeye spinoff Echo is eyeing a January debut instead of November. Animated series X-Men 97 will go early next year. WandaVision spinoff Agatha Darkhold Diaries, the one with Catherine Hahn in the title role, is looking at a drop date leading up to Halloween next year. Some of that has to do with the strikes, of course, and shifting schedules, but it does seem like Disney is comfortable putting a little more distance between these Marvel shows.
Yeah, really anything I say at this point would be pure speculation, but boy, would I love to be a fly on the wall to know how much of this is the calculus of recovering from the strike, how much of it is the expansionist opening of Disney Plus versus the condensation of, okay, we got to make some money now. How much of it is, figuring out the exact type of flavor of story that customers seem to want to watch from this type of format. I bring you only questions, no answers.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we are in the phase where we are transitioning. As viewers, we got used to, they're just going to keep making more and more and more, to the point sometimes we're like, it's too much. There's too many Marvel shows, too many movies, too many this and that. With the streaming series, they are now consolidating to, we must only make hits. We must only make things that retain and attract subscribers. We can't just keep throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. We saw what sticks. Let's make more of what sticks and stop throwing things at the wall. And that seems to be reflected a little bit here. The word out there is that the changeover on Daredevil might have been cost related, that it was just too expensive and they want to make it cheaper to make.
Last I heard, there was a couple of characters that suddenly were not on the show anymore as plot elements that would clean up certain expenditures.
You get rid of a couple of fancy salaries. Although if they already paid them, then you got a sunk cost to deal with, right? If you paid them for shooting half the episodes.
Well, I mean, a lot of people have sunk costs. Not as many people as the four of us. And that's why we require your support at patreon.com/Cordkillers.
Who's the fourth?
Yes.
Who's the fourth of us?
The fourth of us is the audience.
It's the listener. Yep, that's right. I locked it up and you set it down.
Indeed. We reckon you enjoy sinking your costs into us. So please keep doing it.
Yes. And we're doing our best to provide more value than ever. The after talk segments just get longer. Our flexibility and our ability to listen to you and your recommendations just gets better and better. Thank you to everybody who has kept us loud, live, and independent for over 10 years now. It's bonkers.
Yeah. If we're going to hit our 10-year anniversary at the end of December, most things die before that, well before that. We instead reinvented ourselves, which is incredibly risky. And the only reason we even bothered to do it is because you support us. So thank you for allowing us to see the value and continuing to bring value to you. All we ask, you give a little bit of that value back. Patreon.com/Cordkillers. Let's set off on our search party.
Bryce, we're going to have a whole discussion about where these bumpers came from.
Absolutely. Yeah. We would not risk our life and limb to head out on a search party to look for cool stuff to watch if it wasn't for you. But we know everybody was excited for Rick and Morty Season 7, which premiered Sunday night. When the credits rolled, we confirmed the names of the new voices of Rick and Morty. Ian Cardonia voiced Rick. Harry Belden voiced Morty. I want to talk about the episode entirely, the return of Season 7. But let's start with that. What did you think of their performances, Brian?
I thought they were fine. I was lost in it immediately. I was very, very surprised at how quickly whatever spell they cast, it's like, whatever, maybe Rick has a cold this week and pretty soon I'll forget if you listen to my voice 10 years ago, it sounds very different from my voice today. So it bothered me not at all that the voices sound different.
The same with The Simpsons. You go watch old episodes of The Simpsons, you're going to be like, wait, these aren't the voices. Because
and the actors even explain, I think they were going for a Walter Matthau thing with Homer originally, and then they totally gave that up and it became, dopey Homer.
Yeah. Bryce, do you have any thoughts on these new voices?
I think that the new voices are good. I think that I think the script for this episode really helped out a lot. There were a lot of secondary characters taking direct point of view control. You know, they're doing the whole intervention at the Applebee's, the annoying Applebee's thing that they're at.
I think they were riffing on Dick's Last Resort, right?
But that is a scene dominated by all of the secondary characters, and so. It ends up being kind of a soft episode to launch with, right? Do one where there's going to be a million characters, and there are all the characters you know and love, and Rick's there, and he's got some things to say, and Morty's there, he's got some things to say. But I think if you look at the composition of this episode, I read it very favorably to the voices that I think are probably a 9 out of 10.
The plot direction of this episode. Last I heard, the team mere months ago was working on season 9. And so this is the premiere of season 7, and animation takes a long time to do. And so I'm certain that they had to do a lot of re-recording, a lot of shuffling in order to replace voice talent and so on.
Yeah.
But boy, is that supernaturally on the nose theming with Mr. PB and his hitting rock bottom and his friends really trying to dig him out of a hole. And the practical skeptic in me says it's not very likely that they would be able to assemble that episode within the last year. It had to have already been in the pipeline, which makes me wonder if in some ways the episode itself wasn't an attempt at an intervention in the real life meta-narrative of the show.
Or is it playing Pink Floyd at the start of Wizard of Oz and things just match up?
Right? I don't know. Yeah. And what's weird is with this much money on the line, I'm not going to say I don't trust people, but I would say there are strong incentives to stick to very simple narratives for everybody who says anything about it.
Well, and I can see a world where, I mean, the same thing just happened with the voice of Mario, where they've kind of had to really quietly launch that voice. They said, we're not going to tell you who it is until people buy the game and see his name in the credits. Because I think anytime there's a recasting, it creates a lot of dirt, a lot of dust in the air. Because casting or recasting is generally not very good, right?
And then everybody starts digging up research on the person who replaced him and start making up opinions before they actually hear them in context. Yeah. And I think that helped. Morty came out, and I immediately was like, yeah, that's Morty. I never really thought about Morty again. Rick, every couple of times in the episode, I thought, I don't know. Is that how Rick would have sounded before? But I wasn't sure. It wasn't like, oh, that's wrong. And like you said, Brian, I will quickly just get used to it. And they said they went through a lot of work trying to find people that didn't just devolve. They said a lot of people can do Rick and Morty for a line. It's really hard to find people who can consistently nail it across entire episodes, because I think Dan Harmon said most of the Rick people start sounding like Randy Savage at some point or something like that.
There was a rumor that I heard floating around on the Rick and Morty subreddit that seemed to indicate that in the past, there had been particular lines that they couldn't get from Justin Roiland, and allegedly Dan Harmon just did the Rick voice and we never noticed it before, which maybe gave them the confidence to say, don't worry about it. It's going to be fine.
It's going to be just fine. The episode itself was, I'd say, right in the middle percentages of Rick and Morty episodes. I didn't fault it. It did not leap me to new heights, which for a season 7, I suppose, is not disappointing.
And politically speaking, I think would be the right thing to do. Like maybe this was a mid-season episode that they decided to ramp up and have early based on the rock bottom themes of, Mr. PB and so on. That's fine. Their job, the press release that they need to put out there is everything is fine. We're still moving forward. We're writing season 9 right now.
Yeah. Although, if it stays mediocre, is that death?
I don't even know that I would call this mediocre. I laughed quite a bit. I mean, it's a mediocre Rick and Morty is better than an average Simpsons these days.
The episode's good, and I also think like it fits the meta narrative of like, hey, we're all this kind of a coming of age story. Kind of everyone learns a little bit more about each other. So maybe it makes sense that this is one where Rick and Morty stop becoming canon text, and the canon text becomes an impression of the previous text. Fandom as canon. I don't know. There's something interesting there.
There was some reference to canon along those lines.
Bird Person says, Rick, it was very canonical to meet you.
I thought of you with a lot of the fatherhood things as well.
I was so thankful that I have a very healthy relationship with my 15-year-old as opposed to Bird Person.
All right. Let's move on to Seinfeld. At a stand-up performance in Boston, Jerry Seinfeld hinted that there might be more Seinfeld to be made. Maybe TV? I don't know. The show ended in May 1998. Then they had sort of a fun storyline on Larry David's Curb Your Enthusiasm, where Larry David had tried to put together a reunion episode. But let's listen to Seinfeld in his stand-up routine in Boston. Here's what he had to say.
Here's what I'll tell you, okay? But you can't tell anybody. Something is going to happen that has to do with that ending. It hasn't happened yet.
And he goes on to say, just what you are thinking about, Larry and I have also been thinking about. So he's working with Larry David on it as well, whatever it is.
So rampant speculation mode of everything that I've heard. I like Justin Robert Young's theory the best, which would be a live Netflix special of them out doing a thing after the button at the end of Seinfeld.
Yeah, because spoiler alert, if you've never seen the end of Seinfeld.
No spoiler alert. They don't get a spoiler alert for this one.
They end up getting thrown in prison in where? Minnesota or Iowa? I think it's Minnesota. I can't remember exactly. But they get thrown in a jail in a smaller town. And that's where it ends. They're in jail. They're in prison. So that was in 1998. So we're not going to go back to 98. We're not going to de-age people for a reunion, right? Are we just going to pick up in 2024?
Here's an alternate thesis that I like equally well. A mockumentary of whatever happened to. So it's one of those mockumentaries where the filmmaker can't help but put themselves in the story, and it's like, whatever happened after? And they're like, I don't really talk to you now. Yeah. And then they set up a reunion, and they're like, hey.
Well, because the other thing you may not remember from that final episode is George and Jerry's TV show got picked up, and that is supposed to be Seinfeld, because George is a very thinly veiled metaphor for Larry David, and all the previous episodes were them meeting with executives at NBC, pitching the show about nothing that Seinfeld was. And so maybe it's a documentary of the show that never was and what could it have been, et cetera.
Oh man, there's so many possibilities. Do you have a preference? Do you have a preferred pet theory?
That they don't do it.
You don't want them to do anything?
Yeah, I don't think they need to. I loved what they did with Curb Your Enthusiasm, where they showed themselves going through the foibles of trying to create a reunion episode. I thought that was perfect. That was the perfect ending.
Bryce, do you have any opinion on this one?
No. No. I don't know. I would be really fascinated to hear how well these reunion specials do, both when they come out and kind of in the long tail. You know, like, do people watch these things because it's an event thing that's happening, or do they really need the document of what what Friends' reunion was like?
Let's be clear. I will watch it when they inevitably make it.
Have fun with that, Tom.
Star Trek Prodigy, the Paramount Plus / Nickelodeon show, is headed to Netflix. Yes. Paramount's animated kids-oriented Star Trek series first season will show up on Netflix later this year, and the second season, which is in production and never aired on Nickelodeon or Paramount Plus, will debut on Netflix next year. If you remember, Prodigy started on Nickelodeon, then was moved to Paramount Plus, and then was moved out. You can't watch it right now because Paramount Plus didn't want to pay the royalties to have it sitting on their servers.
It's kind of a case of what's old is new again, because we're just describing syndication rights, right? Where it's like a thing.
Not even syndication. I guess it would be syndication in the first season, but it has become fairly common for studios to make things whether they're going to air on that studio's network or not. I always think of the fact that CBS makes American Idol originally for Fox, now for ABC.
I think it might have been 14 years ago that we were covering the fact that DirecTV was paying to keep Friday Night Lights on.
Yeah, right.
Just because it did well on their service.
And if you want to know why Friends is on Paramount Plus, it's because CBS made Friends for NBC. It was NBC's big hit show on Thursday nights, but the CBS production house made it. I've been of the opinion that a lot of these studios are going to end up becoming more production house than streaming platform. Paramount Plus may be headed that way, maybe not. But whether they are or not, you can still make things for other platforms. And the thing to remember is these platforms, a lot of people have thought of them as cable replacement. Like, oh, Netflix will be what I use to watch TV. They've never been that. They've always been a channel or a group of channels replacement. And every one of these platforms appeals to a different demographic, a different audience with different tastes. And that means not everything that the Paramount studio is capable of producing is going to be very popular with Paramount Plus. Makes sense to me that Star Trek Prodigy, meant for kids, is not that popular, even though it's Star Trek on Paramount Plus, which is more popular with adults, which has an older skewing audience. So Netflix, which has a very thriving kids-oriented demographic, is going to be willing to pay Paramount more than they would have made to stream it on their own platform in order to stream it on the Netflix platform, and everybody wins. Netflix gets a show that keeps people subscribed, and Paramount Plus gets the money.
Well, and on top of that is remembering the factor of time. Like maybe the actual humans who eventually are going to watch this just aren't cooked enough yet. You know, you got to wait 3 or 4 more years and then find them where they are and then put it on that particular channel.
Yeah, I think we're going to see this more and more, is that it doesn't matter. The studio that's making it, no network makes a show. They have a studio that makes the show for them on a contract. And that studio might be within the same corporate family. Quite often it is, but it isn't always. And so mix and match, you know. Netflix has a studio now, but they didn't originally. They just hired other studios to make things for them. So some were network studios, some weren't.
In the very beginning, as you and I remember from CES, when we talked to Netflix, we were like, what are you guys doing with the Stars stuff? And essentially, this is me totally making up their words, but the way I heard them, they're all like, yeah, the Stars deal is kind of steroids for right now. It's unsustainable. They're going to charge us more, and then we're going to be in trouble. We have to start making original content or finding other sources for it.
Well, one source that you can get for anime is a new free ad-supported TV service from Sony's Crunchyroll. It will show up on LG's Fast service, Roku channel, Vizio Watch Free Plus, all starting already October 11th. So it's there. Go watch it. It's also coming to Freevee October 17th. So it's not there as we're recording this, but by the time a lot of you hear this, it will be. It will feature English dubs of older content as sort of a way to say, hey, if you like this stuff, you might want to subscribe to the regular Crunchyroll to get other stuff.
Bryce, I know you've seen so much more anime than I have, and just tell me if this rings true at all. This seems to me like a very, very smart move, because anime is a high-risk, high-reward type of entertainment. If I was just paying for an anime movie, the thought of paying the same amount I paid for Akira to get something that was not a fit for me would really upset me. But the moment it becomes, what did it cost me? Some ad time, and then I could give up on it, I think is chef's kiss, and I think it'll invite more people into the ecosystem.
Maybe if they build this out, at the moment it sounds more like a trial. Like, hey, try a few, and then not exactly a full fast play. Or maybe this is a trial to see if there's a full a way to offer a very large library of content via free ad streaming. As far as like streaming has brought anime prices down a lot, just compared to decades past. So I don't know that there's that much of a hesitation. I think people are used to streaming services, and the consolidation between Crunchyroll and who was it that they bought? Was it Funimation?
Yep.
It could bring prices down even more if that consolidates small enough.
Yeah, and they're going to make money off this fast channel too, so that might help in the big pool of money that's swirling around as well.
Yeah.
Baz Luhrmann released the film Australia in 2008, starring Nicole Kidman and Hugh Jackman. It didn't do that great, but Luhrmann has now waded through 2 million feet of film to edit Australia. Or I'm sorry, I should back up. Back then, he waded through 2 million feet of film to edit Australia down to 165 minutes of a film. He has now re-edited that footage to be a 6-episode television show called Faraway Downs. So it's going to have footage that was not in the movie, and it's going to be edited to be an episodic show. It will premiere at South by Southwest Sydney, October 21st, then come to Disney Plus in most areas, Star Plus in Latin America, and Hulu here in the United States on November 26th. Perfect Thanksgiving viewing on Hulu.
The closest thing I can think of to this that I've experienced was when the Alan Smithy production, David Lynch, version of Dune was released as like a 4.5-hour miniseries, and where they didn't even get the chance to fill in the eyes and stuff. But I assume technology is better now. Like, are you hopeful that this will be good or better?
Well, I don't know that the technology thing is a problem for the Australia.
Well, certainly the ability to rapidly and cheaply edit, and there are more options in terms of stock footage and in terms of pickup shots. And
this feels similar to me of what they did with The Godfather. They took Godfather episodes 1 and 2 and re-edited them for TV. Coppola brought in some footage that hadn't been used in the movies to kind of smooth it out, and made a TV miniseries out of The Godfather. This feels like that, except instead of airing it on primetime television with commercials, it's airing on Hulu or Disney Plus, depending on where you are.
What was the TV adaptation of that content, or I guess repurposing of that content? Was it praised or condemned?
It was, I don't remember exactly, but I think it was mostly praised as making it accessible. Because remember, this is back in a time when a movie wasn't in the theaters, you couldn't watch it. There were no VHS, there was no DVDs, online streaming. If you wanted to watch The Godfather, you had to own a print of The Godfather or hope somebody was doing a revival of it somewhere. So this was a way to make it available to the populace. And I think it was well respected as being an interesting presentation of it.
Apparently, they had been airing those movies on NBC in the years
Australia?
Or it's The Godfather.
The Godfather. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So that was actually, it was not a smash hit.
Going back to the Australia thing, I don't know. I think it's interesting to be like, let's take a movie that didn't do well, add more footage to it, and make it into a streaming show. Frankly, that's probably got a better chance of succeeding because there's a niche on Hulu that loves the movie Australia, right? Maybe Disney has that in their demographic. They're like, oh, we over-index in people who love Baz Luhrmann and the movie Australia and Nicole Kidman and Hugh Jackman. So, makes sense.
And also they're changing the title, right? So this means that to some segment of the populace, this is their first bite at the apple. And they're like, this is quite good.
Bryce alerted us to this next one. On Thursday last week, Netflix launched Baby Animal Can. Now, you can still watch it now. It's not live, but for 2 hours, the show was live, streaming live footage of various animals from the Cleveland Metro Parks Zoo. Brian, I feel like this is a brilliant way to test your streaming infrastructure at scale. It's not going to be the same scale as a Chris Rock special, but it's going to get some scale because it's baby animals and people are going to pass it around to each other. And it's no fault. If the baby animal stream goes down, who cares, right? But it will give you a chance to test some stuff out.
It is brilliant if the purpose is to be a mechanical test, except for I don't know how much it's going to scale. However, as a marketing test for this kind of content, it is also brilliant because as we were talking about before the show, I discovered that dogs love watching other dogs on TV. So if this suddenly becomes very popular, then that's also data. And it did all of it without much of fanfare, without any promises, without any star names. Last time I checked, rhinoceroses don't unionize. It's win-ins across the board.
And
I feel like
no promotion.
Go ahead, Bryce.
No promotion for this. I had to look. The Cleveland local news had reported on this. This is.
They didn't want too much scale.
maybe, but it looks like they're going to keep doing this for a few more Thursdays in the middle of the day. So it'll be neat to see what happens. What you do a second, third, and fourth time.
Yeah, if they keep doing it on Thursdays and they start building it up and it starts to reach some viral scale where it was like, because these kinds of animal cams often take off on YouTube, usually, right? Sometimes on TikTok, but
or Twitch.
Or Twitch. Yeah, absolutely. So I think Netflix would like a little bit of that sauce, but maybe the under promoting of it is to make it feel organic, that people were into it rather than like, oh, Netflix is trying to foist this off on me. How good can it be? The final 6th season of Netflix's The Crown will premiere in 2 parts on Netflix. Part 1 coming November 16th, part 2 December 14th, and part 2 is the one that deals with the aftermath of Princess Diana's death. So guessing part 1 probably ends with the crash.
Finally, the end of the monarchy is upon us. The Crown has been canceled, and with it, a legacy spanning back.
Brian, it's just the final season. Yeah.
Oh. Right. Well, wait, they're going to still have crowns, but they're not going to release them?
They're going to wait to see what happens.
Wait, they converted it into a reality TV show? What is this?
Yeah, actually, that's what they should do. They should go what they did with like Squid Game reality. They should just start doing documentaries of the royal family. Like, well, we brought you up this far. Here's what happened today. Netflix's Squid Game reality show premiering on November 22nd. $4.56 million prize for the winner. AMC released a trailer for The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live. That's right. They're still walking. They're dead, but they're still walking. This one stars Andrew Lincoln and Danae Gurria reprising their roles as Rick and Michonne, coming in February. If you liked Orphan Black, AMC released a trailer for Orphan Black Echoes. This is the spinoff that stars Kristen Ritter, Jessica Jones. That one's coming sometime next year. For All Mankind Season 4, premiering November 10th, Apple released a new trailer for that. It's set in 2003. Everyone from Season 1 is in old people makeup. And the goal of the season, according to the trailer, is to create a self-sustaining settlement on Mars. And Brian, you noticed that a trailer for Invincible Season 2 has dropped. When's that season coming?
I don't know when the season is coming, but I did notice that they do some trickeroos. They're doing the same thing everyone does, where it's like something, multiple realities, which means, of course, everyone who's dead can be alive again and all that stuff. However, I deeply loved Invincible Season 1. I'm very excited about it.
And this is... I'm trying to find so in the trailer, they should have said when it's coming. Here it is. November 2nd, coming November 2nd.
Nice.
All right, let's get to the buried treasure. These are things that we have dug up to watch.
Most people want to know why they suddenly got rich.
Buried treasure.
That's the feel we have when we sit back and watch our buried treasure. Brian, what is your buried treasure this week?
Oh my goodness. I continue to absolutely adore the experience of experiencing Star Trek through the eyes of my 10-year-old daughter who only knows it through Lower Decks. And for the very first time, as we begin the latest season, I think we're 3 or 4 episodes in, I forget the name of the race that speaks only in metaphors and memes, but I was able to, for the first time, explain, hey, do you want to have this joke explained to you? And she's like, yes. And so I found a little 8-minute condensed version of Darmok, and she's like, oh, that's cool. Can we go back to the cartoon? And then, but I feel like she's opening up to a wider world, and they're sort of setting up a theme where it's like I'm able to pause at the cold open of or the end of various episodes and say, see, the reason this is funny is because Vulcans be like this, and Romulans be like that, and Klingons be like this. And like she's speaking the language already, and I can't wait to continue to see her spiral down the rabbit hole. She is loving it.
How are you loving the first couple of episodes?
It's great. Mainly because I do believe I made a certain prediction about how the entire series was going to go. And I do believe I predicted that the Lower Decks crew was not always going to be in the Lower Decks. And instead they were all going to promote together and remain a cohort as they all ascended through the ranks. And it looks a little bit like Brian was right.
Oh, you nailed that one, Brian. Yeah, you absolutely nailed. Now, whether they stay there and continue to proceed, like you said, I don't know. I wasn't sure that they could pull that off and make it seem like they were still the underdog crew. Farther ahead in the season than you are, Brian, and I could say yes, they do. I don't know how. I think because they don't put a big button on the prestige, they sort of immediately do what we all do when we achieve something, at least those of us like myself, and just start to be like, well, if I achieved it, it can't be that special. What's the next thing?
Immediately discount everything that came before. You're like, oh, I don't know. I'm just who am I? I'm just a podcaster in my 15th year of podcasting. Who am I?
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you're into it. I can't wait to hear more as you progress through the season. I want to mention a show that I just wrapped up watching myself. One of the reasons it's hard to sort of talk about shows these days is because everybody watches them on their own time scale. This is one that wrapped up a couple months ago, I think, but I finally got around to finishing it, and it's not because I didn't enjoy it. It's just a matter of time. Aquafina is Nora from Queens. 3rd season, 7-episode season. Aquafina, who is Nora Lum, plays a version of herself in this season. It's got Bowen Yang, who's from Saturday Night Live as well. He stars in this as a cousin. It's just about her life in Queens, and the finale was just beautiful because in the finale, and I'm going to spoil it, and I think it doesn't matter that I'm going to spoil it. You will still enjoy it because it's not the events that make it special. It's how she tells them. But if you don't want to get spoiled, just giving you a minute to skip ahead because I'm not going to talk too long. She has an out-of-body experience where a ghost shows her alternate versions of her life if she had made other decisions. And then the ghost pulls off its outfit and reveals itself to be Aquafina,
playing herself,
the actual Nora that is producing the show.
That has a strong chance of seeming silly, but it sounds like it landed it.
Well, what's fun is that Aquafina doesn't overdo explaining who she is now, because we all know, we're watching the show, but says, do you want to become me or do you want to stay yourself? And Nora from Queens chooses to stay herself, which I think is really an interesting comment from Aquafina, who wrote and made the show.
Well, we'll speculate more on this. Yeah.
All right. Meanwhile, Brian and I both still watching Our Flag Means Death. I imagine we'll probably talk about this one more in After Talk as well, but how did you feel after week 2?
I only made it through the first episode. We ran out of time, but
this is a lot of episodes to drop in 2 weeks. Half of a season.
They're doing 2 a week. Yeah.
It's a lot.
I thought it was 3 a week.
Well, I mean, last time it wasn't even either. I think, right? In the first season, it wasn't always 2 or 3, or it would go back and forth.
Well, yeah. I can tell you this much. I continue to love everything about this show. I enjoy the meta narrative stuff. I was surprised to hear a friend of mine say that it was beginning to go full Tumblr post, where it's like, I don't know, I wouldn't mind some pirate episodes, a little bit of pirate action in this pirate show.
I agree with that. This second set of 2 episodes, I felt like I was enjoying. Maybe I was drifting a little bit, but not much. But yeah, it's all relationships, and it's. There's a little more pillaging in the first 2 episodes than in the third and fourth one, but still great.
I think season 1 has a very slow burn to get into the relationship stuff.
Yeah,
and so for me, I don't feel that too much in these first 5 episodes, but it does feel different than last season. It definitely feels a lot. There's comedy and there are goofs and gags, but it's not a. It really is a drama. It is a real romantic.
It's becoming a drama with comedy elements.
At the moment I'm at right now, there's nobody I'm afraid of, and like I'm no longer even afraid of Izzy Hands now that he has a magical leg. It's like,
do you need to be afraid of someone?
Yeah, it's called tension. it's what a pirate show's usually based on.
What about the Chinese pirate?
No, she's adorable. I want to give her a hug and tell her it's going to be all right. Like, there's nobody I'm afraid of.
Well, she needs to strike some fear next episode. And according to the coming up next, she'll try. So I'm looking forward to that. We get 2 episodes next time. So you're right. We had 3, then 2. We get 2 next week. And then there's only 1 finale. It's an 8-episode season.
I like this strange schedule, where it's based more on like how hungry are people? Great, let's get them on the hook. Let's give them enough to set up the next thing and so on.
Yeah, what's interesting is I watched the first of the 2 episodes that came out this week, all in a go, and then stopped, and then waited a couple of days and watched the next one. Which is a better experience than having been in the middle of an hour-long episode and paused, I think.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I like, oh, this is a good breaking point. I'll come back to it. Yeah. All right, Bryce, what should we be on the lookout for?
Hey, we got an email from Josh who writes, "Hi, team. I wanted to recommend a new Hulu original Korean show called Moving." Hey, we've heard of that. It is a superpower show, but not a superhero show. It is a complex character study on folks who have superpowers, the complications in their relationships, how the government manipulates them. While these may sound like normal superhero tropes, the way that they've told the story is amazing. The first season is 20 episodes. Sorry, that was my emphasis. And not one feels like a filler. And there is something about Korean dramas doing romance that just melts your heart. I would highly recommend you give it a try, as I'm sure you will love it. P.S. Hulu just picked up a bunch of Korean shows and tagged them as Hulu originals, so Tom can build his watch list on Hulu. Thank you, Josh. Tom, you mentioned this on the show two weeks back. How moving is moving?
It was very moving. Here's what I'll say, because at the time I thought this might be one to recommend to Brian. It's 20 episodes, but they're less than an hour each. We're not talking about hour and a half episodes like we sometimes are with Korean dramas. It's got a really fast moving plot. One thing that happened since I talked about it 2 weeks ago is I found that it doesn't just tell the story in the present and past. It actually shifts the focus in the middle episodes to the past. So not sure if that's too jarring for some audiences to be like, well, wait, I was following these kids in high school and they're the children of the people with the powers and they have their powers and they're dealing with it. And then suddenly you're in the past seeing the backstories of the parents and how they got their powers and how they met each other and how they came to have children and why they are on the run from the government now instead of working for the government as they were in the past. But they're great stories. It's almost taking that 3-episode arc thing that Andor did, and telling and incorporating it into a, unified storyline and kind of telling it out of sync. The only thing I will add is that the very last episode does a very typical K-drama thing, which is wrap up the story in like the first 15 minutes and then spend the rest of the episode showing you what happens to everyone, which is not a thing we do in US shows. And I know for some people, they're like, what a waste of time. We already ended the story. Why are we spending time doing this? That might not play well for some folks, but Brian, it's not a lock like I thought it might be, but I would still recommend it if you were just in the mood, like, you know what, I want to try one of these. This is a good candidate. You will definitely like the first several episodes, and I think you'll like it almost all the way to the end.
I'll be down to give it a try. You mentioned that it might be jarring that you switch timelines without much indication. It's really interesting because science fiction in book format is almost deliberately impenetrable, and it'll say confusing stuff, and it leaves it for you to figure out, oh, I get it now, we're in the past, or oh, I get it now, we're in cyber world, or whatever. And for a while, television would kind of hold your hand. I think about Battlestar Galactica and Firefly, where the first ones where they had different color palettes for different parts of the timeline. And now we've dropped that, and now it's just like, hey, are you paying attention or not? Like, you can figure this out, go.
Yeah, they do like 1993 kind of like big, like quick things, but at one time they're just like 2 years before that. And we're like, wait, 2 years before the present or and we figured it out, like you said.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my thoughts on Moving, Bryce.
There you go. Thank you, Tom, for your thoughts. Thank you, Josh, for sending that in. There are 20 episodes of Moving in America. It's on Hulu. Check the internet for listings of where you can find all your favorite shows. Just Watch is a website. You can do that. If you've got something we should be on the lookout for, please email it to us. Our email address is cordkillers@gmail.com. Thank you.
Brian, you need to thank Doghouse Systems for that computer that you're using right now.
Well, I mean, thanking them would imply that I own them when secretly they've been on loan for so very long, and we're working off our debt by encouraging people to go to doghousesystems.com/rogue. Spell it right, ROGUE. You'll get a free SSD, but more importantly, you'll be indicating that they made a solid investment by loaning us these systems and making this show possible. Thank you, Doghouse Systems. Your unparalleled customer service is unparalleled. X equals X.
Yes, those lines never meet. Now, Brian, I have a new thing that I'm trying out that I'm charging people for, and I don't want them to pay for it yet.
Sorry. Look, I am not a Android that belongs to Harvey Mudd. You're not going to get me with a paradox trap.
No, it's techtom.substack.com. It's a paid newsletter. Every day, I take my notes from my preparation for Daily Tech News Show, and I share my real thoughts, right? Not that I hide my real thoughts on Daily Tech News Show, but on Daily Tech News Show, we're spending a lot of time having a roundtable discussion. And my job there is a moderator to kind of play both sides and bring out points and get a greater understanding of the issue. But I know some people are like, Tom, I wish you'd just really say what you think. That's what this is. This newsletter is me just really saying what I think about the various stories of the day. I'm experimenting with it. I'm getting it in shape. So don't pay for it yet. And I will tell you when we're ready.
Give it a try. Where should we go?
Yeah, you go to techtom.substack.com and just bookmark that or
sign up for free
to go back.
Subscribe for free.
Sign up for free. Sign up for free, but it won't get you the paid stuff. So,
okay, but would it be fair to say that on DTNS, your full-time job is to steel man both sides of the argument? This is a place where you get to rust man and punch one or the other argument.
It would be fair to say that. Okay. I'm not sure if it makes sense.
I don't know. Rustman.substack.com has a ring to it.
Rustman this argument. Techtom.substack.com. Let's go scanning the horizon.
Send a scanning crew aboard.
Scanning the horizon!
Amazon released a documentary on September 12th called Kelce, Kelce. It's about Jason and Travis Kelce, two NFL players who faced off against each other in Super Bowl 57. The parents couldn't lose. They also couldn't win because their children were on both sides. It has become the most watched documentary ever on Prime Video in the United States. Travis Kelce is rumored to be dating Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift has gone to several of his games, appeared on Saturday Night Live, and he did too, though not together this past weekend. The games that she has attended have become the highest rated football games since the Super Bowl. So these things are always planned well in advance. I don't think Amazon knew that this was going to happen, but good timing.
Well, and I would imagine there's a number of documentaries that are cooking at any time, but maybe somebody gets a phone call and says, yeah, this one, we're going to need it in,
it's ready to go, right? Maybe we just, it's not impossible.
Speaking of Taylor Swift, both Beyonce and Taylor Swift have concert films coming to theaters, and both are setting records for sales. Taylor Swift's Eras movie made $128 million worldwide and $96 million domestic to set new records for concert films. Neither of them will be eligible for an Oscar. That's because the documentary rules say works that are essentially promotional or instructional are not eligible, nor are works that are essentially unfiltered records of performances. Hamilton, if it matters, did also not qualify since it was a film version of an actual Broadway production. No word yet on that baby animal channel.
It is unfiltered. Promotional? I don't know. It's a performance though. So yeah, probably not. I think there's going to be a little controversy over Beyonce. If she wanted to push it, she may not, because there's a lot more edited behind the scenes stuff in her concert movie.
Closer to like the Madonna Truth or Dare kind of content.
Yeah. So I don't get the sense that anybody's going to push that, but yeah, I thought that was interesting. Netflix is getting into restaurants and retail. You heard me right. Netflix House is the name for a series of venues that will let you shop for Netflix show-related merch, eat some cooking show-themed food, and possibly catch some live events inspired by the shows. It's kind of like a Hard Rock or Planet Hollywood, but for Netflix. Bloomberg says Netflix management views the venture as promotional. They don't see it as a source of revenue yet. First two Netflix House locations will be opened in the U.S. in 2025, with plans to open them eventually around the world.
Hey, Bryce, when's the last time you went to a Hard Rock Cafe?
3, 4, 5 years ago at a convention.
What about Planet Hollywood? You want to go there tonight?
I've never been to Planet Hollywood. I'm happy to go. Do you have a spaceship?
I don't think they don't exist anymore.
Okay, what about Planet Hollywood?
You know why?
Planet Hollywood Casino in Las Vegas.
Because I'm pretty sure
Planet Hollywood
that their goal was not to be net revenue positive, but instead to be promotional. So whatever, man. Welcome to Tax Write-Off, the cafe.
Yeah. I would say, we talked about this, Justin Robert Young and I talked about this on Daily Tech News Show as well. The other thing that Netflix gets here is a permanent location for their pop-ups. So we've talked about all these pop-ups that Netflix has and these special events and theming restaurants and everything. I ran into one when I was in Seoul, South Korea, for a show that was premiering that week, where people were lined up to go in and just walk through and look at stuff. They weren't even buying stuff. They were just walking through and looking stuff. I could see where Netflix might say, hey, the money we're spending on creating all of these event spaces and pop-ups and promotional stuff, what if we spent that to create a permanent space that actually generated a little bit of revenue? And the math might work out.
Well, and in which case, my unsolicited advice to Netflix would be, hey, man, everybody knows that a Lexus is secretly a Toyota. Why you got to put the Toyota name on the front? Why not have a cooler name that makes it sound like a place I'd want to be instead of a promotional
instead of Netflix
mall.
House?
Yes, exactly.
Which I think is trying to sound like Soho House, but...
swing and a miss. In the latest survey of U.S. high school age teen, Bank Piper Sandler found that YouTube has passed Netflix for the first time for time spent watching. Teens said they spent 29.1% of their daily video time on YouTube versus 28.7% on Netflix. Hulu was in third place at 7%. Disney Plus and Prime Video gained, while Hulu, Max, and cable declined. I had to reread this several times to believe it. YouTube is only just now the most popular among teens.
Yeah, that is a little bit surprising. Especially because you have to pay for Netflix and you don't have to pay. You have to watch ads, but you don't have to pay to watch YouTube. I don't find it surprising that Netflix is declining because YouTube has no competitors for what it does. There's, Dailymotion and a few others out there, but really YouTube is YouTube. The live streaming aspect has some competition from Twitch. That's about it. So Netflix is feeling the heat of, it's Hulu and Disney Plus and Max and Paramount Plus and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, this is more of a surprise that YouTube wasn't farther up earlier, I guess. I also think it's an indication that more people are watching YouTube. I know this is just teens, but I think it's becoming a broader platform than it was.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of it can be attributed to their more sincere effort to put effort into YouTube Shorts as a competitor to TikTok.
Yeah,
maybe.
So
they're capturing from more sources now.
And by the way, TikTok not in the same category as YouTube. TikTok was the number one in social media in front of Snap. So I'd be curious if they were in the same category, how they would compare to each other. Most of the headlines on this next story talk about the fact that DVDs are no longer on sale, but I think it's more significant that Best Buy is going to stop selling Blu-rays too. DVDs, I wouldn't be that shocked in, but they're not going to sell any physical media for video. That's both in-store and online. They've got an LP section at bestbuy.com. They will not have a DVD and Blu-ray section starting early next year. You'll still be able to go in the United States to Walmart, Amazon, and Target, as well as your local truck stop if you want to get DVD or Blu-rays. Redbox will continue to rent them now that Netflix doesn't. But Brian, this is a milestone on the way to the demise of physical media. Since you can still buy cassettes, vinyl usage has been rising. I wouldn't count DVD or Blu-ray discs out entirely. They're definitely firmly in the niche category now.
Maybe DVDs, but Blu-rays really shocks me because there simply is, for a giant chunk of the world, no superior way to consume a movie when it comes to fidelity and quality than a Blu-ray disc. Like, they're shutting off the very best experience. And I know we have a lot of very passionate listeners and viewers, and I encourage you guys to write us at cordkillers@gmail.com. Now is the moment to take all of your frustrations and let us hear it. Make us as angry as you guys are, because this is, quite frankly, a bit shocking to me. Like, what is the very best way to experience your favorite movie now? Just online, and now all of a sudden it has to be streamed, and you're at the whims of I don't know.
In the theater, Brian, like God intended.
Oh, well, man, there's a old Metro Goldwyn Mayer over here.
Let us know. Cordkillers@gmail.com.
NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube has drawn about 1.3 million fans. That's already more than DirecTV's 1.2 million that it had last year. About 41% of Sunday Ticket subscribers who purchased the package as an add-on to their YouTube TV subscriptions are now new YouTube TV subscribers.
All right. Well, there you go. YouTube succeeding, picking up the ball and running it to the end zone for a touchdown in ratings, Brian.
Yes, and spiking Blu-ray discs while they do it.
All right, let's move on and hear what the chatter is. Got mail. Adam in San Diego writes, "Hey, Cordkillers Reckoning. I reckon I have a common problem that many deal with, which is keeping track of everything I'm watching. I've taken your previous recommendations, and I'm using an Apple TV. Because of all the devices I've tried, it seems to do the best job at tracking the shows I'm watching and reminding me when new episodes are available. However, it doesn't do this for certain services like Paramount Plus and Netflix, which is quite frustrating. And I'm wondering if you can recap for us why some services don't integrate, and if there's any light at the end of the tunnel. I was thinking maybe they think we will find new content or stay longer if we open the app directly and see all the stuff on the landing page, but in reality, I often completely forget about Netflix due to my reliance on Apple TV to tell me what I'm watching. So for me, not integrating is having the opposite effect, where we rarely open it, and once I had the realization, I canceled it. I can only assume they have some metrics that are feeding into their decision, but I can't figure out what they might be." The best explanation I have, Adam, is that there is a relationship with the customer that has to happen for that integration to occur. In other words, Apple has to have access to a list of what you're viewing, and then be able to deliver you directly to that show. And that Netflix doesn't want to give Apple that data, and it doesn't want to give Apple that relationship. They think it's worth it to risk you not remembering that you have Netflix stuff and then later canceling it in order to force you to go to Netflix and actually look at all the recommended shows and then realize what else is there, as well as keep the data out of Apple's hands. They don't want Apple to see any of the data that Netflix has on who watches what. which just as a consequence of the thing operating would have to happen. Interesting thing about Paramount is Paramount Plus is an Apple TV channel. So if you subscribe to Paramount TV through Apple TV, then it will show up and it will track it for you. But it's interesting that it's not working when you're subscribing directly.
Two additional thoughts. One is if they play ball with Apple TV, then they are giving Apple TV permission to decide where they end up in their lineup. And then they have to negotiate to Mother May I please be on the front page and all that stuff. That puts them in a weak negotiating position. But more importantly, I suspect, is they do not want Netflix users to be trained every single time that the Netflix button is the Apple TV button. They want the Netflix button to be the Netflix button.
Wabbit Magic writes, so I just discovered that the last half of the final season of Doom Patrol is starting to come out beginning October 12th for the last 6 episodes, and it's on Max. The 4th season started almost a year ago last December, but was canceled in January. So that's good to know. Thank you, Wabbit Magic. And then, hey, CKRs, Cordkiller Reckoners. I like this.
I like it.
This is from David. I like this a lot. Hey, CKRs, my house is one of those Discovery Plus subscribers. With everything increasing in price, we have been holding on to that one and looking at canceling others, like Netflix, for instance, if they increase again. We did not see the benefits of Max, as we never really watched anything on HBO or cable. There just wasn't enough things we were interested in enough to justify the price increase. Thank you, David, for sharing the Discovery Plus only subscriber point of view.
Oh my gosh. By the way, Tom, I am so excited. I want to hear all the angry Blu-ray people at cordkillers@gmail.com.
Yeah, right. Hey, CKRs, here's why I'm blue in the face with anger over the demise of Blu-ray, or something to that effect. Folks, our website is still cordkillers.com. Our email address is cordkillers@gmail.com. We're live on Twitch, twitch.tv/Night Attack, Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. I reckon we'll talk to you next time. Oh, we're not done yet, Brian.
What? We have more?
Yeah, look at all those names scrolling by.
Tom, we just did so many hours of insights into the world of cord killing.
But you know why we were able to do all those hours? It's these people right here. These are some of the greatest people of all time.
Oh, better than Abraham Lincoln?
I believe he's on this list.
Better than Abraham Lincoln's ghost?
Yes.
Better than Richard Nixon?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Hard to conceive, but I am not a crook or a liar when I tell you they are.
Why are all of these names either future or past presidents? It's really weird.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Presidents, everybody.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.